In this lesson, we're going to cover what is Bitcoin. Okay, so you might have heard of Bitcoin, you might own some Bitcoin, but let's dive in a little bit deeper into what it actually is. So it's a cryptocurrency. It uses cryptography, and it was created by an unknown programmer. We only know this programmer by his pseudonym, Satoshi Nakamoto. It could be a he, it could be a she, it could be a group of programmers. Nobody knows. There has been claims of people being Satoshi, but no proof has been given on that. So one of the reasons probably Satoshi remained anonymous was probably because of the fact that the whole system is decentralized, and to have a central authority wouldn't actually go with the whole the idea of having some decentralization. So global financial crisis of 2007 and 8 was the time when Bitcoin first appeared. That's when the white paper was released. He was very active on forums discussing this peer-to-peer cash system, and then he released this white paper highlighting the centralization problem, and there was also a mention of this within the Genesis block, the first block in the blockchain. Now, the peer-to-peer electronic cash system is Bitcoin, the actual system, but also the currency is called Bitcoin as well. Okay, now the power of this cryptocurrency is the decentralization of it. It is one of the characteristics of blockchain technology, one of the main innovations of it, the fact that you don't need a middleman, intermediary. So that means people can send each other digital value, and it doesn't have to be money, it could be any digital value, an asset, through this computer network without the need of a central authority like a bank or a central administrator. So it cuts out that middleman, which reduces fees and roadblocks and other issues that we have with centralized systems. So the smallest unit of the currency Bitcoin is a Satoshi, which is 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So you don't have to own a whole Bitcoin. If you want to buy a Bitcoin, you can, but it's at the moment is very expensive for a lot of people. So you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. So it's divisible basically. It's one of the characteristics of money. So it's also scarce. So it's supposed to work as money, so it has all these features. So it's scarce. So there's only 21 million Bitcoin that can ever exist, and that has not been reached yet. But it'll be the year 2140 or 2140 by the time all Bitcoins are mined. Okay, so the mining process I'll explain in a second. So transactions are permanent. So whenever you send a Bitcoin to somebody, it cannot be reversed. You can't get that Bitcoin back unless that person sends you that Bitcoin. If you've made a mistake, you would basically have to ask that person to send you back the Bitcoin. It does not give you refunds, or you cannot get the money back. It's permanently stored on the blockchain as a transaction. So the things that basically it combines is computer science, cryptography, and game theory, which we will dive in deeper within the course. And it solves the double spend problem. So digital currencies have always had this problem of being double spent. If you can double spend it, which means that, say I have some Bitcoin and I spend it, I should not be able to spend that same Bitcoin again. But obviously a lot of people want to spend it. So for example, if you have Bitcoin and you buy a house, you shouldn't have the Bitcoin still in your wallet so that you can buy a car or a yacht. Once you've spent it, it should be spent, and Bitcoin solves this issue. So the double spend problem is solved through consensus, and we'll dive in deeper into the double spend problem in another lesson. So blockchain, the technology, the real innovation is the underlying technology of Bitcoin, and it is based upon open source software. So anybody can download the Bitcoin software and become a node on the network to secure the network, and also they can become a miner. Okay, a miner as in mining for Bitcoin. I'll explain that in a second. So it's open source basically. It's not private. A private company doesn't own the code. It is open source, so literally anyone can download it. And a lot of people have used the Bitcoin software and the code, the blockchain code, to create their own blockchain. Little tweaks, like for example Litecoin, little tweaks here and there, and you've created something else. So these projects are all about kind of improving upon Bitcoin, but Bitcoin and Bitcoin's blockchain is the first. So Bitcoin is created by a process called mining. So these cryptocurrencies are basically created when these computers on this network solve this complex mathematical problem with their computation power. So obviously they have to run these powerful machines, and it costs them electricity. So why would anybody do that? Well, that's what the innovation is. They actually have an incentive to contribute their computation power to the network, and when they do that, they secure the network, but also they are verifying transactions. When they are solving this mathematical equation, what they're trying to do is basically solve a block of these transactions. I'll explain that further when we look at consensus in a later lesson. But what they do is basically they compete to add the next block of Bitcoin transactions to the blockchain. So they're always in a competition to basically add a block of transactions to the blockchain, and once that blockchain has that transaction block in there, it is verified and confirmed, and the deeper it goes into the blockchain, the more secure that those transactions are. So when miners successfully verify the transaction block, they are rewarded with newly created Bitcoin. So it releases these newly created Bitcoin out of that 21 million Bitcoin, and that is also reduced. The amount of Bitcoin that you get for mining a whole block and verifying the whole block successfully is reduced every 4 years. So it is very difficult to be mining a whole block of transactions and verifying it as a solo miner. You would need a lot of computation power, and it will take you years. Maybe it's like a lottery, so it will take you years to actually be able to mine it yourself. So what people do is they join pools. So there are a group of miners that are combining their computation power to solve blocks, and then they split the reward. So currently, at the time of making this video, the reward is 12.5 Bitcoin. In 2020 May, that will be halved. So every 4 years it gets halved, and it will be 6.25 Bitcoin per block reward. So when I said like anyone can join the network by downloading the software, some people may want to mine as an incentive to get Bitcoin, and they'll basically get that Bitcoin when they verify the blocks. But some people may just want to run a full node, and those who run a full node, what they're doing is they're keeping the network secure by holding a whole copy of the blockchain. So the full copy of the blockchain, the whole ledger, they're saving it onto their computer, and they're connected to the network. Okay, and what they're doing is they're helping in the ordering of the transaction blocks. So decentralization is something that I mentioned, and it is a very important topic. We will cover decentralization much deeper throughout the course. But Bitcoin blockchain is decentralized, which means no one controls it. Okay, so it is politically decentralized, which means that there is no central authority. It is architecturally decentralized as well. So the architecture of the network, there's no central point of failure. The blockchain is on computers all over the world. Okay, so hundreds and hundreds of computers have the blockchain on them, and which means that there is no central point of failure. Okay, so this is fault resistant. Okay, so if there is an attack on the blockchain, it won't work. They can't attack the blockchain because it's on all these computers. They would have to attack all of them at the same time, and it's not going to happen. So what you have is the only time you can actually have a successful attack is if 51% of the hashing power is basically taken over. So that's a 51% attack, and that's something that we'll cover later on in the course as well in another lesson. So it's logically centralized. Basically the whole network acts as one network, and data is not stored centrally, so users have more control of their own data. Okay, so it's a network of nodes worldwide. Globally, there's all these computers that are connected using this software, and they're all securing the network, and they're all working without a central point of failure. So it's very secure, and it uses cryptography to actually connect these blocks of transactions, and we'll cover that when we talk more about blockchain. But cryptography is what keeps the transactions secure, and these are all characteristics of the blockchain. And Bitcoin, obviously there's the currency, but there's the blockchain, and the Bitcoin blockchain is very, very secure because of the size of the network. The larger the network, there's more nodes or globally that are securing the network, which means it is more secure and robust. So as I mentioned, Bitcoin with a capital B refers to the network protocol, and Bitcoin with a lowercase b refers to the actual cryptocurrency. So both of them are called Bitcoin, but they're two different things. One is the currency and one is the actual network. So later on in the course, what we'll do is we'll discuss other types of ledgers. These are distributed ledgers. They're not all of them are like the Bitcoin blockchain because they're not open source, or they're not as centralized. They're not as decentralized, but they are still distributed ledgers. They still use some of the features of blockchain. They take a pick and mix of what they need, and it is suitable for a lot of businesses to do that because they don't want all the transactions to be visible, made public. They want certain parts of the data to be private. So there are other distributed ledgers that exist. There's the decentralized ledgers, there's centralized ones, there's permission blockchains we'll talk about as well. So ledgers have existed for a long time. Okay, they've existed as paper books of transactions for centuries. Businesses now use digital ledgers to keep track of transactions. The problem is that digital ledgers can easily be changed and copied. Okay, so whenever you copy a file, whenever you send a ledger to someone else, you've just created another copy of it. So that's what this solves, to have a one copy that is distributed on a network, and everyone is updating the same ledger, rather than making copies of it and duplicating it, which you can have mistakes made, and everyone has different versions of it. It doesn't really work. So what blockchain gives is basically a network of this ledger that everybody has, and everybody updates, and everybody verifies that the updates are true. So that is done through consensus. So the database is only as secure as the computer it is saved on. So with these distributed ledgers, so what blockchain does is it does not rely on the computer to secure the ledger, but it relies on the network. So with distributed ledger technology, copies of the ledger is on multiple computers on a network, and computers collectively decide on what gets recorded on the ledger.